In this class, we want to move from a list of the tools and skills needed to the details of how to actually approach program design and course design.
We'll begin to map out the process of designing a digital program of study from the overall planning to the specifics of creating content.
Let's begin by thinking about the kinds of teams we need to make digital learning work. There are many aspects to class design and creation, with teams needed to plan and design classes, master media operations, set up websites, and market the courses. The first thing to consider when crafting your team is its size. Digital teams range in size from 6 or 7 people, such as at the University of Pennsylvania, to as many as 500 people, such as at Arizona State University. Digital learning teams operate very differently from university to university. Success requires more than just a strong team, though. You need a learning framework. A learning framework is a set of principles that guide instructional design. You can create your own or work with an outside company that has one. If you create your own learning framework, follow evidence-based practices. Make sure that your guidelines are based on real-world experience, not just theory. Whether you create your own learning framework or work with a pre-existing one, the key question to consider is, how can a class use different modes of in-person, online, and outside activities to connect with and engage learners? In planning, it's important to think about and plan first at a program level. Most students don't just enroll in a class, they join a whole program of learning. This means that effective class design considers the overall program goals, not merely course goals. It's also important to begin by planning, mapping out, and budgeting for your complete workflow, from initial planning to final delivery. This table allows you to see the typical cycle for a program beginning its digital transformation journey. It is important to determine which specific courses within a program are most likely to benefit from incorporating digital tools. You don't need to digitize your whole program at once. Rather, it is more efficient to begin by digitally enhancing core classes, which give everyone a strong foundation so that students get the support they need to succeed. Generally, working on your program's core entry-level courses first makes good sense. There are several reasons for this. One is that these are the courses that generally have the highest enrollments. Investments in improving these classes will be used by most students, allowing for more effort and dollars to be spent on them.
Next, it's important to think about program delivery modes and audience. Will students be in person or remote, or a mix of both? This table allows us to view some common options in terms of delivery mode. On the x-axis, from left to right, we see course formats moving from meeting in person to remote meeting modes like Zoom. On the y-axis, from top to bottom, we see content being delivered synchronously to content being delivered all asynchronously. A typical example of synchronous delivery being a live lecture in person or through Zoom, and an asynchronous example being a pre-recorded lecture being embedded in a learning management system. Example number 1 in the upper left describes a typical face-to-face course where meetings are held in person and all content delivered in course sessions. In example number 3, we see a course that does not have in-person or remote meetings, and content is delivered asynchronously. This is often the mode of delivery of many MOOCs.
Once delivery modes have been standardized across a program, it is important to determine which specific courses within a program are most likely to benefit from incorporating digital tools. You don't need to digitize your whole program at once. Rather, it is more efficient to begin by digitally enhancing core classes, which give everyone a strong foundation so that students get the support they need to succeed. Generally, working on your program's core entry-level courses first makes good sense. There are several reasons for this. One is that these are the courses that generally have the highest enrollments. Investments in improving these classes will be used by most students, allowing for more effort and dollars to be spent on them. Another reason is that core intro classes are often very appropriate for use in other fee-paying executive education classes. For example, an intro management class could be run as a full semester-long class on campus or broken into shorter modules for adult learners, generating new revenues for the institution. Finally, such entry-level classes are often the gateways to programs of study. Intro engineering and biology courses, for example, often have big enrollments, are demanding, and are required for any students pursuing a degree in these fields. Investing in adding digital scaffolding for these courses in the form of recorded lectures, demos, and exercises, for example, can really help new students, especially those from underserved communities. This is an example of how digital tools can really improve equity of outcomes. The next big question is how to engage faculty in the digital design process and which faculty to involve. Generally, in most programs, leading faculty are central to the project from the get-go. It's important that university leaders plan for this and allow them time off for this extra work or extra compensation for the time involved. There's also the question of which faculty will be involved in any class filming that might take place. Deciding which professors to intentionally engage is a strategic question. The faculty chosen must be open to working with digital education teams and learning about delivering content on these new mediums. Often, younger, more junior faculty fit this profile. But as any film classes may ideally be used by several sections of the course, it generally is a good idea to also film with leading senior faculty members. This way, others in the department, perhaps faculty coming up through the ranks, will be open to using these lectures also in classes they deliver.
Once the basic courses, delivery modes, and key faculty to engage have been chosen, programs move into the design of a specific class. The core idea most programs follow is that of backwards design. First, mapping out learning outcomes, and then planning activities to train students in these skills. During this process, it's important to ask yourself what works best where. There are many types of digital education media. What content works best in a recorded lecture or in a digital case study? What learning outcomes would best be achieved with an active learning project, a debate, or a group project? The question of backwards design and this mapping of activities and outcomes is a complex one, and in the next module, we'll devote 2 lectures to the details of this process. For now, it's enough to understand that this planning is key, and that it must be done, and done well before the class can move on to the phase of planning and scripting specific videos and activities. Once you've defined learning outcomes and the sequence of learning activities, the process of class creation moves into its scripting and planning mode, often with a deep dive into specific formats for creating what we call asynchronous content. There are many different types of asynchronous content, from recorded lectures with slides or whiteboards, to studio discussions between a faculty member and a student, to even simulations of dynamic real-world scenarios. These can be recorded video lectures like this one, or digital case studies or labs, or other activities. This is the point in the process where digital class production begins to closely resemble the work of a television production studio.
In fact, one good idea at this point is to actually look at, with your key faculty, a lot of examples of different video formats. A great example of this is the menu from the website of Arizona State University's Ed Plus Media Lab. As you can see, it offers a menu of options for instructional designers and faculty to view and choose from. These include virtual whiteboards, recorded demonstrations, discussions, and individual and group interviews.
Once the core formats have been decided and the number of videos to be made set, the team must move to a detailed production planning phase. Again, using very similar techniques to those used by television production companies. For example, this page from the University of California, Irvine's media team tracks days of filming and editing, and the number of animations to be produced, and maps use of studios and other resources, all in a manner that would be very familiar to anyone in the film or television industry.
Once the basic plans have been set, the question now moves to how to best work with professors and how to best film them. Educational content usually begins with a video lecture. There are several reasons for that. First, faculty already have lectures and slides for their in-person classes. Translating those lectures to a video format is relatively easy. But what is the best way to film a lecture? For a small operation without much professional support, you can take a DIY approach. Simply do it yourself with smartphones or inexpensive video cameras in a clean, well-lit setting. For a video lecture for big audiences, however, you probably need a professional film crew. Later, we'll talk about the basics of using a green screen, similar to the format used by TV weather people. You might want to create a script and use a teleprompter to ensure a crisp, clean presentation. Scripts can keep professors on track. The real challenge is cutting down 40-minute classroom lectures into the single-digit time frame. To make sure you have a script or PowerPoint that can be delivered in less than 10 minutes, avoid over-explaining. Compress concepts down to their essentials. Remind professors that the power of a TED Talk comes from its brevity and focus. Professors can also benefit from media training. Now, they don't have to be slick TV presenters, but training can help them connect clearly, directly, and simply with students. Think of professors as guests on a talk show. Keep everything simple and clean, from clothes to grooming, as well as concise text that moves briskly from point to point. In general, it is your job to help professors look good on camera. Don't be afraid to play the director. Above all else, make sure to encourage energy and passion in your professor's performance.
Other asynchronous methods can also be effective at delivering educational content. Animations are one. Moving characters around a screen can be an effective way to demonstrate ideas, but it's also expensive. For this reason, take advantage of pre-existing libraries of graphics. Interactive maps are also effective, injecting life into historical and geographical ideas that could otherwise come off as stiff. At the University of Washington, students used an interactive map to understand historical elements of medieval India. You might even take advantage of the growing availability of virtual reality, also known as VR, to benefit learning. This is exactly what Purdue University did in its engineering department. Students used VR to take a 360-degree tour around a boiler room, helping students to understand the complex process of power generation and control. This gives the student an immersive experience in a world they couldn't otherwise explore. Finally, when designing and planning educational experiences, think through website and course delivery. Consider using pre-existing templates to get a professional look with less expertise needed. It's also very important to plan delivery as a digital remote experience. Think about how to use digital TAs and how to support Zoom sessions. Arizona State sets the gold standard here. They do all this. They have a higher ratio of TAs to students in an online class than they would with a traditional class. When you can't be together physically, you need to be together in other ways. Finally, in order to use your class time most effectively, make sure to identify which activities should happen in live meetings and which ones can happen in asynchronous discussions. We hope this video encourages you to begin thinking about the types of content and activities you'd like for your students to engage in, and strategies for planning and managing this process.
In our next module, we will present more in-depth videos on the specifics of both the instructional design process and class filming. For more information on these issues, please also look at Chapter 6 of the Leveling the Learning Curve book.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to talking with you again soon.